Stay tuned. Let's begin. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. Advent has begun. It is here. This is the first Sunday of Advent. I hope you notice the people who made the Advent wreath, I asked them this year to put it right in your way, not out of the way or off to the side, in your way when you're walking in so you can't miss it. I hope you noticed. You didn't just walk around it and miss it. And I hope that each time as we're coming into the church, seeing those candles will be a helpful aid to us as we follow along this path of Advent. Also, during the Masses in Advent, you may notice that the gradual and the Alleluia just before the Gospel are a little bit longer during the Advent season. For us, that is there to help us to pray. It's to slow us right down, to help us to pray and to realize what we're hearing in those words themselves, but also in the Gospel, which will soon follow. All of this is very profound and very important. We've been going through this series over the last number of weeks on the last things. We've gone through a whole bunch of them already, and today I'm happy that and it's very fitting today as well, that we will be speaking about the final judgment. So you might think, well, why are we talking about that during Advent? Because Advent, there's really a number of things that we need to focus on during Advent. For sure, Christmas, right? We're remembering the birth of Christ, remembering his first coming, for sure. But also during Advent and Christmas, we're remembering and looking forward to something in the future, to the second coming of Christ, when he will come to judge the living and the dead. We look forward to his final judgment. And so that's a part of the spirit and the time of Advent and of Christmas. And in fact, today the gospel reading speaks about this. It doesn't speak about the birth of Jesus yet, but first it reminds us of his second coming, that coming which is still in the future. Let me begin just by sharing this story. There was the king of Bulgaria who was not a Christian, he was a pagan. And St. Methodius was alive at that time, and he had this idea that he wanted to go to have a chance to meet the king, to proclaim the gospel, and to convert the king of Bulgaria to the faith. And so he set out to do this, right? And he went to the castle. I don't know what they have in Bulgaria or had at that time. But he went, and do you think he got to see the king? Of course not, right? You can't just walk in and demand to see the king and get to see him. So he met one of the attendants, and he said this is what he wanted to do, to meet the king, because he had some important things to share with him. But he said, no way, forget it. But instead, since St. Methodius was so persistent, he said, if you want, you can paint a picture and we'll give it to him. Why don't you do that? So St. Methodius went home. He was trying to think, what would I paint? If I had one picture to give to the king to try to bring him to Christ, what would I paint? And after much prayer and reflection, what he decided on painting was an image of the final judgment. And what he painted, you can imagine. There was Christ at the center who was seated on the throne and who was speaking the words of judgment. On Christ's right side, there was light, and there was a sense of joy and peace and of hope. And you saw the images of the saints beside him, of those who were in heaven or destined for heaven. And then on his left side, you see there's much more darkness. Even the faces are hideous, right? They're awful. It's so dark and depressing and sad. And these are the souls of those unrepentant sinners, right? And then in the middle, there's a great chasm. And in the middle, he drew pictures of these demons who were carrying their instruments of torture, getting ready to take all of those on Christ's left and to enjoy, I guess, right? Doing this to them forever. So St. Methodius painted this image, got it all ready, and gave it to the attendant who then took it to the king. And he actually did. He took it to the king. And remember, this is a king who has power, right? There's no one above a king. A king, he's the king, right? And he has all the money. He can tell anyone to do anything, and they have to do it. He decides. There's no one above the king. But yet, when this image was presented to him and he saw it for the first time, he was blown away by it, right? He looked at this image of this man who was speaking judgment, and it really shook him. It shouldn't have, in a sense, right? But it shook him as he thought to himself that there is someone above him who will speak judgment upon him. And as he looked at Christ, he saw this beautiful image, and also a terrifying one that drew up in him really a holy fear, a holy terror of the authority and the power of this final judge. And so he asked his attendant then, whoever painted this, bring them to me immediately. And so St. Methodius was quickly brought to the king. And it was through this image that St. Methodius was able to preach the gospel to the king, that he was able to explain the doctrine on the final judgment and really to preach the whole gospel. And what happened then after that, the king actually converted. He asked to be baptized. And after that, it was a known fact that before any big decisions or any important things where he would rule or act as a king, he would go before that image that St. Methodius gave him and spend some time reflecting upon it to make sure that the action he was going to do, that it would stand up, because he knew he would have to give an account for it, even if he's a king. For us and for our tradition, I like this story because the final judgment, it is an important image. It's an important sign. It's a truth of our faith that has helped to guide us over the ages. The Sistine Chapel, right? Maybe the crown jewel of the Sistine Chapel is the image over the altar, which is the image of the final judgment. We have this image in many places there to help to guide us. For each of us, like the king, there's profound meaning, lots of meaning in images and reflection upon the final judgment. For us, we might wonder sometimes in our life, how can it be that those people who do bad things, that are cruel and mean and cheat, how come they seem to get away with it sometimes? How can it be? How can it be, on the other side, some people who are so good, who are so faithful, they just have obstacle after obstacle and they never seem to catch a break? How can all of this be? I don't have an answer exactly, right? There is a mystery to all of this. But one of the things that is reassuring, that is in some ways even consoling, is that there will be a final judgment, that no one will escape it. Nothing will escape the gaze, nothing will escape the eyes of God, right? And he will give a true and a just judgment to all. So even for that person who cheats and who finds a way of never getting caught their whole life, he will have to come before Christ, just like the king knew that he would have to. And then as well, something else to consider with that final judgment, that last one, is that we already talked a little bit about our own death and our particular judgment, that after our death we will come before Christ and we will get that message, heaven or hell, right? And maybe heaven by purgatory, sure, but our eternal destiny will be set at that time. But not all of our story is finished yet, right? For us, when we die, it doesn't mean that all the consequences of our actions, of our lives, all the good, all the bad just stops. But a lot of it carries on, right? Hopefully for the good. A lot of the good things that we've done in our lives, many of you are parents, grandparents, aunts or uncles. Hopefully a lot of that good work that you're doing in trying to raise your kids, to teach them, to pass on the faith, to help them to be virtuous, that much of that, there'll be a big ripple effect, right? It will continue on for a long time, your good works. There'll be lots of good fruit. But it can also be that there's lots of bad fruit, right? Lots of bad consequences of the things that we say, of the things that we do. For some of us, maybe reflecting on our own lives, we see we're still recovering, right, from maybe some of the things that have flowed into our lives. The point is that Christ at the final judgment, he can make all of that just, right? All of that will come into play from our death even until the end of the world. Today, I do want to touch on two big things that I think are important just to be aware of. The first one, it involves the end, right? The end of all things, right? This whole world, it will all come to an end at some point. And there's much that's written about that end, even in the Bible, especially in the book of Revelation. But not only there, Christ also says a lot about the end of the world, and then also what comes after the end of the world. And so some of this, especially for the end of the world, it may come in our lifetime. It may, right? We may already be in it. I don't know. But it's good to have it there in the back of our mind, right? So that if we see these signs, that we won't be caught off guard. What are some of the signs? The Catechism outlines 6 of them that will surely come when the end is near, as the end quickly approaches. The first one to look for is that the gospel will have been preached to the whole world. So everyone in the whole world will have had a chance to hear the gospel and to receive it into their lives. That's one of the first signs, what first must be accomplished before the end. The second one is that the greater part of mankind will be without faith and immersed in the things of earth. That even though the gospel has been preached, and maybe even been preached well, we hope, right? We're trying. But it will not be received. For many, they will not have faith, or maybe many have had faith, but they will lose it. They will be caught up in worldly and temporal things. The next thing that it says, the third, is that the Antichrist will appear. That there will appear a man who will fashion himself to be Christ, and will even have the power given him by the evil one to perform great miracles and great wonders. But it is not the Lord. And so for us, and we know this, right? So we have to be very careful about who we follow. If ever anyone preaches a gospel different than the gospel that you've received through Christ, don't believe them, don't follow them, even if they work great miracles, even if there's great wonders. We are so lucky to have the doctrine of the church, right? Which is a sure and safe guide for us, even in confusing times. And then finally, with the Antichrist, the Catechism also says that there has already been types of the Antichrist, right? There's one big one at the end, but there's already been little ones. And those little ones are building up until the arrival of that final Antichrist. The fourth is that Enoch and Elijah will return and preach penance. The fifth, that Jews will be converted. There will be mass conversion of the Jewish people to the Christian faith. And then sixth, that dreadful signs will appear in the heavens and great tribulations will come upon mankind. And for that final one, Christ says it himself. It was in the gospel today. He says there will be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars. And on earth nations will be in dismay, perplexed by the roaring of the sea and the waves. People will die of fright in anticipation of what is coming upon the world. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. So Christ himself even outlines how there will be great disasters, right? And you can read more in the New Testament especially, but elsewhere too, about the end times. One of the things that the author of the book of the last things that I'm going through points out, and it fits with what Christ says today, is that at the end, the sun will cease to shine, the moon will no longer reflect its light, and the stars will disappear. There will be a time of great darkness, and then fire will rain down from heaven and set the whole world ablaze. What an end, right? That's the end. So this stuff, again, we don't know if it's during our lifetime. It may be, it may not be. But we need to make sure that we're ready for whenever it comes. And especially some of those signs, that we can read the signs of the times. The second one, and this one is important because this is for all of us. All of us will surely experience this one day. After all of that is finished, the world comes to an end. Then this is what it seems will happen. That first, there will be a resurrection of the dead. As Christ rose, his body and soul were reunited on the third day. At the end, after the end, there will be a resurrection of all of the dead. So you can imagine all of the cemeteries, right? Those who are buried there rising up. That's why we have cemeteries. There is a holding place, a waiting place until the end, until the resurrection. All of them will rise up and their bodies and souls will be reunited. For anyone who is still alive, they will be good to go. They already have their body and soul united. For this author, he describes it, it's really nice. He says how the soul will be guided down by their guardian angel to greet their resurrected body. Remember, we talked a few weeks ago about how the body will be transformed, right? It will still be you, it'll be clearly you, your body, but it will be a resurrected body with special qualities, right? And so as the soul sees the body, the soul is overjoyed at seeing their body now glorified, right? And then is able to enter their body with the rejoicing of their guardian angel. Of course, that's for the just, right? For those who are not destined for heaven, they will have the opposite effect of seeing their body and hating it, right? And that be adding to their sufferings. What happens after that? So first, the resurrection of all of the dead, all the people who have ever existed since Adam and Eve until the end. They will all be alive, body and soul reunited. After that, the teaching is that they will then proceed to the valley of Josaphat. And we don't know for sure if this is literal traveling there or something a little bit metaphorical, but they will travel to the valley of Josaphat. And before Christ comes, first, what they will see, this author points out, and this is something that many of the fathers of the church believed and that no one disagreed with them on, that what they will see is a large procession from heaven of angels coming and carrying with them the cross of Christ and many of the instruments of his passion. And so there will be this glorious procession of these things that were horrible, the cross, the hammer, right, that put the nails that went into Christ's flesh, terrible things, but which in a sense are glorified now, because look at what Christ did with all of them. It's through those that he saves us, right? It's through those that he offers redemption. And so there will be this solemn procession for all to see of the Holy Cross. There's many relics of the cross around the whole world. By the power of God, all of them will be reunited, and the cross will be reformed. It will be reshaped once again. And then those instruments of the Passion will also be brought forward in a solemn way for all to see what Christ has done. After that, there will be the advent of the Judge, it seems. And this would maybe be a little bit of a breather, a little bit of a waiting period of waiting for Christ to come. St. John Chrysostom of this period, he says, everyone will then be filled with astonishment, with apprehension, with terror, for even the angels will be sore afraid. For us, it's so true, right, that we're on this side of the veil. We don't see spiritual things. We don't see with great clarity what's on the other side. All we get is tiny little glimpses, right? Just little hints of it, little glimpses. But that veil will be removed, and we will see things as they truly are. We will see things that will overwhelm us, right? And I think that's what St. John Chrysostom is getting at. Having that veil removed, we will be astonished. We will have like a holy apprehension, even a holy terror, a holy fear. And not only for us, but the angels as well, as Christ comes, as he comes to reveal himself. As he does so, he will then take up his throne, and the judgment will commence. For that final judgment, the author, again, of this book that I've been going through, he describes it in this way, and I think it's good. He describes how our guardian angels will guide each of us to the throne, to the judgment seat of Christ. We will come before him individually for our final judgment. And it's good, right, to have our guardian angel there. That guardian angel has been with us our whole life, has seen everything, right? It's good to have that friend, that guardian angel, right beside us. He then describes how coming before the judgment seat of Christ, the just will fall down before him in adoration. And then next, the enemy will be present also, and he will hurl accusations against the one being judged. He'll bring up everything he can against this person from their life. But do not be dismayed, the guardian angel will also have much to say, and he will be there to defend his client. He is the defense. He will produce the examples and instances of good works, of penances, of repentance, of virtue, all of those things. And then Christ, he will give the final judgment. For those who are found worthy, he will array them he will give to them a new robe, which will be arrayed in splendor, and he will crown them with the diadem of the eternal kingdom. For us, I hope, right, all of this is helpful, especially the second part. All of us are going to go through that. So I hope it just gives you at least a little bit to think about, and maybe one day when that time comes, you'll remember, right? So you know kind of what's happening, what to expect to some degree, right? This is only a tiny little bit. But also, even more than I shouldn't say even more than that. But also it's important how thinking about the final judgment, how that helped the king of Bulgaria, right? How going back to that image, reflecting and looking on it, helped him to find his way through life, to help him to guide him to that point where he would come before Christ for his judgment. In Advent, it's a really important time. Yes, we're remembering the birth of Christ, his first coming, right? But this isn't just a remembering kind of thing. This is also something where we are in deep preparation. We're in preparation for that second coming, which is coming. It's coming quicker and quicker every day. And we want to be ready. We want to have the benefits that preparation gives to us in knowing what's ahead. In the name of the Father, and of the Son,